Well, get close.
But just so the commissioners know, I'm flying without the minute track system up, so just doing things manually. It's a system-wide problem, so hopefully they get it fixed. Cindy, you let me know if they do.
Did I see y'all meet a couple times a week? Is that right?
Monday and Thursday.
I call this meeting of the Riley County Commission to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Good Thursday morning, everybody. Beautiful morning outside. I'd entertain a motion that we go outside today, maybe. But, with technology the way it's working this morning, it might not be a bad idea either. So
Sure.
we got a pretty busy agenda this morning, so we are going to go ahead and move right along and start off with some public comments. Start with Zoom. I see David up there, but I think David's going to be with us later. Do you have anything, David?
No, sir. But yeah, I'll be in attendance here in an hour or so.
Okay, thank you, sir.
But
That's all I see up on Zoom, so we'll move to the chamber, and we've got some public comments this morning, so. You can remove your mask while speaking,
Okay,
or leave it on, whatever you're comfortable with.
just for that. Okay. Make it more clear. Thank you, commissioners, for allowing me to come here today. I'm Marvin Rodriguez, 3000 Creighton, Manhattan, Kansas. And just like to make a comment on what, I don't know if you're gonna do it today or what you're gonna do it when, consideration up for this next month on the mask program, which you're going to, supposedly it was going to end on the 17th of May. So I would like to encourage you to let it expire, and if sooner, not later, but because I know that what I've been talking about with a lot of people, they have really expressed the idea that they're not comfortable with the mask program anymore. So anyway, that's just my comment to say that you should go ahead and let it expire. Okay.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
That's all?
That's all. I told you.
We got lucky this morning.
Sounds like you know it.
Yeah, just a little bit, just a little. Do we have any other public comments this morning? Okay, seeing none, we will go ahead then and close public comment off and move to commission comments, and we'll start with Commissioner McKinley.
All right, Thursday afternoon or Thursday noon, I attended the intergovernmental luncheon. We had a Foothills Wellness Coalition gave a presentation on health and all policies. Tuesday evening, I joined in the Zoom for the Pawnee Mental Health kind of year-end celebration. They introduced some of their key employees. They did acknowledge a couple of people who are long-term employees, been there 30 and 40 years. They started giving some old friends with Pawnee awards, and my connection went out. So that's as far as I got. Technology. And since then, in the last couple of days, I've been looking at studying a lot of information on the mask ordinance, the sales tax issue, and the church properties, which we're going to be discussing today. I've spent a lot of time looking at the background stuff on that. Finally, I wanted to acknowledge that Rich Vargo will soon have a doctor in the house.
Already do.
Congratulations to Darnell.
Thank you.
That's a nice deal.
Yeah, that was. She worked hard at it. That's for sure.
I'm sure.
That's for
It
sure.
doesn't come easy.
Yeah, great accomplishment. Yeah, her graduation is actually the 14th, so I will not be here the 14th. I'll be at Baker University on the 14th.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Proud Papa.
Huh?
Proud Papa.
No.
Yeah. Now more money will get to go into my account.
Gotcha. Now paying all that stuff's on the salary of the doctor, where they may or may not end up at. So, okay.
Has she done a residency?
No, it's education.
Or is she a PhD or?
No,
Education.
Dr. Ed. ED.
Oh,
Oh, education.
okay.
Yep.
That's great.
Yep. It is pretty,
Teacher at
yeah,
Riley County.
huge
Yeah.
accomplishment. Yeah, she teaches up at Riley County. As a matter of fact, she was just in the paper too, for
Yeah, that's where.
25 years of teaching and plus her doctorate. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
quite an accomplishment.
Yes. That's it.
Okay, Commissioner Foki.
Okay, yeah, the intergovernmental lecture was actually on Monday, which I attended here in the chambers.
I said.
We get our days. and stuff, so-
It seems like eternity ago from my perspective, so I
Yeah,
understand.
Our main topic was health and all policies, and the presentation was made by Vicki James, the co-coordinator for the Flint Hills Wellness Coalition. And Pathways to Health in Kansas grant, and Food and Farm Council of Riley County and the City of Manhattan. Other comments were made by the various participants, including County Commission, City of Manhattan, Chamber of Commerce, KSU, NBAP, and others. Clancy Holman was not able to attend for the legislative update. Meetings will hopefully move to in-person in June, with the next one scheduled on June 28th. After the meeting and for the next couple of days, I've been communicating with various officials concerning vacating the mask mandate due to expire on May 16th. Seems to be a lot of conversation going on about what we talked about on Monday. General consensus that I've gotten is to continue the ordinance until it expires in May, which is about 2.5 weeks. I coordinated with Dr. Noble this morning and Kathy Kozantowski on the church property presentation they're making this morning. I did talk to several people who might be interested in serving on advisory boards, so we'll follow up with them. So it's good to ask people as you go throughout the community to serve on these boards. And yeah, I got several people interested, not knowing what was going on, so that was good. Just a note, I went to a doctor's appointment yesterday and they asked me if I brought my vaccination record. And I didn't have any idea I was supposed to, but what they're doing is if you don't have your vaccination record with you, they're taking your temperature, making you fill out forms. So that's kind of interesting.
Mhm.
I don't know how widespread that is, but I think that's what we're going to be facing, in the future. When I came out of the appointment, there were some people coming in and I said, "Oh, do you have your vaccination card?" No, we got it in the car. So they went and got it. So I think.
I better go get mine laminated up.
Yeah.
It's gonna turn into, don't laminate them? Well, how are you supposed to?
Because you get a booster, they have to be able to update the card.
Oh, okay. Apparently they don't fit in wallets very
Then I
well.
need to get a card sleeve or something for it then, something, because what happens if you spill coffee on it or something,
Yeah.
it's gone. I mean,
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, so that's something that, I'm sure that is probably going to be happening throughout the country. So that's all I have until later.
Okay, I guess it's my turn then, huh? Well, two things on my list were already mentioned. Of course, we hosted the April intergovernmental meeting. I thought Vicky's presentation, I'd seen bits and pieces of it here and there through some other channels, but getting it all in one spot, one dialogue, I thought was good. It's very extensive and solid. Plenty of possibilities to consider moving forward for the region as a whole, I thought. As usual, it's always great to get an update for all of our community partners to see what's going on, how things are progressing. I have to admit, I was kind of surprised that everybody on this particular call was kind of ready and willing to get back to meeting in person. I was kind of, if I had to flip a coin or take a bet, I was betting it would go the other way. So I was wrong on that. Shows you why I don't gamble very often. So just as a point of reference, I do agree with the conversation though that talking and networking and discussing in person is probably the best approach to solving some of those challenges and issues that we have collectively. But being over the noon hour, I also thought A lot of people can get a lot of stuff done. So I guess there's pros and cons both ways with that, but we got 2 months to figure out how we're going to go about that. I don't know that the Holiday Inn is going to be a good location in terms of social distancing, or if we're going to have to, we may need to meet or something about that and maybe kind of discuss that a little bit more thoroughly between now and June's meeting to figure out how to do that. I talked to IT and it just depends on where our location is, but yeah, a hybrid model may not be so suitable and effective with our technology. So it's going to have to probably be one or the other. And we're probably going to have to figure that part out. So we'll get to it. We got 2 months. It's all good. We'll figure out something and make it work in a manner, which we typically do. So I'm not worried about it. Tuesday afternoon, I had our monthly Zoom with the Pawnee Mental Health Board of Directors. I'm a member of the Finance Committee, so we got an update up front on all that. We made a motion to use some of internal funding to pay off a foundation loan. So there's no loans or anything extensive out for Pawnee right now. So everything is non-debt at this particular point in time. We elected a new board treasurer, got a new member on the Finance Committee to back that up. Got an executive director's report. Be working on a development for a plan for a hybrid model as they're wanting to move back to in-person meetings, which is usually in Clay Center in August. For some of us that'll work for, some of it won't, but kind of that same dialogue of what's appropriate. And they honestly have figured out over the course of the last year that actually more people have attended the meetings via Zoom, since it's in Clay Center. It's a 10-county region, and they usually do in person. So they're going to have that same discussion that we'll have to have with intergovernmental meetings. Also on Tuesday, and Commissioner McKinley mentioned it, that Pawnee Mental Health had their annual celebration. It's an opportunity to take review, celebrate a very difficult and challenging year for them, as well as everybody else. They sent some awards to some great compassionate group of citizens, as well as their own staff and representing the organization, and as well as some of the members in the community. So I thought, was considering the circumstances, it was very well laid out and done very, very well. I too, like the other two commissioners, have spent some time this week dialoguing with vested and community partners once again on this masking issue. I think I'm in like 8.0 or something on that one. It's been a constant, consistent thing throughout the last 15 months, but here we are. So at least I have a little bit of a better kind of configuration of where we're at right now for that discussion later this morning. For me, it's been 50-50. And I've had some very candid conversations, both sides of that. And some people are strongly for it. Some people are strongly against it. Some people are kind of meh, and everything in between those three dynamics. So not much has really changed on that front for me, but we'll have that discussion later. So, and with all of that, thought I got caught up at work. 2 months plus.
You just jinxed yourself.
I know.
Yeah.
I knocked on wood when I was thinking about it this morning, but we've got, well, part of it is we've gotten through all of our early audits and evaluations and all that, which has been complicated too. So now we're at a point where it's actually going to be probably slow for a week or so, and then we should be able to shift into whatever is over there. I'm very, very happy for that, because that's been a little frustrating, to say the least. So with that, that's all I've got this morning. We'll go ahead and move on to our regular business.
First item I have, Commissioners, is bid recommendation for 2 new staff vehicles for Riley County Fire District number 1.
Okay, I see that Russell's here this morning. Do you have some comments on that?
Yeah, we reviewed the bid that we had, and it met all the specs, and so we were recommending it for.
Of course, we only had one bid recommendation, so there's really nothing to choose from. So
Yeah, I'd move to have an authorized purchase for the bid items.
I would second that.
okay, it's been moved and seconded on the bid recommendations for 2 new RCFD, almost said PD. I get my emergency services right. For 2 new staff vehicles. All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Russ.
sir.
Appreciate it.
Just one spot?
Just one spot. Take it easy on it today.
Yeah, I like those. Okay. I make a motion we do that all the time. including USDA.
That's not always possible. I tell you, USDA is one thing, but bond documents are even worse than USDA. They're horrible.
Of course, Rich won't let me use a stamp, so.
Well, and I was just gonna tell you a story about that. We had because it is so bad, it's hundreds. And the county commissioner one time said he refused to, and we said we had to stamp them, and he stamped them, and they promptly sent them back and said, that will not work. They are that strict on it.
Well, we got a lot of practice last year with the small business loan of stamps.
Oh, yeah,
that was
yeah,
a lot.
So good stuff.
You know,
there.
That's for sure. That was a time. Next, I need a motion on highway use permit for Evergy.
I move to approve the highway use permit for Evergy. That's what complete the work is outlined in the permit.
I think we've
I
had,
would second that.
okay, I think we've had several of those in this particular location, but that's not unusual, so.
Yeah.
That's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Too easy.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I'm gonna let you walk today because I'm a little sore.
No, I don't mind walking.
Good point.
That's it. Taking it too easy on you today.
Ow. I did my regular hand exercises for nothing. Shoot,
Stretches.
yeah.
Okay, and next I have Peach Grove Road Culvert Replacement Project, change order number 1, final.
Looks like just cleaning up some of the items at the end of the project that weren't used.
Yeah, it's for this particular, it's not unusual.
Yeah, I mean, I moved to approve the Peach Grove Road culvert replacement, change order number 1.
I would second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded on the final change order number 1 for Peach Grove culvert replacement. All those in favor?
Um,
Got 3 on this one, John.
I know can get away with it forever. Thank you.
Next, I have the Raleigh County Personnel Action Forms. First one's Kyle Voss, temporary status change, COVID-19 tracer. Mackenzie Salzman, separation of service, COVID-19 tracer. Deborah Register, Records Assistant 1, Register of Deeds. It's a new hire.
Sort of.
Rehire.
Rehire, there
Well,
you go.
Well, actually, it was a hire at one time, but last position was elected. Next is Melanie Santiago Ruiz, separation of service, COVID-19 tracer. And then Samantha Tyra, office assistant 2, hire, attorney's office.
And while you're here, Elizabeth, are you going to just go, how many contact tracers do we have excluding the 3 that are leaving?
Okay, so there's 12 FTE, but actual number, I don't know.
Okay.
But when you want to know actual people, it has.
Yeah.
But some of them are working anywhere between
I-
4 to.
Yeah, I don't want to know the specific hours and structure. I just need to know the
Yeah, I'll do
number.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We just cleaned up those records because, it's a very fluid position, so sometimes the communications will lag in when they're actually there. Just like that Kyle Bob, she did a resignation for him, and then the last moment he said, no, I'm going to send that, so very fluid position.
Yeah, and it's going to be that way for throughout.
Yeah, as it continues on.
How long will we continue to do contact tracing, or is that ongoing?
So that actually relates back when Julie was here last week, she asked for extension to December 30th.
December, okay.
So we will have that position and those jobs are at this point to December 30th, but we did add a couple like data entry and clerk responsibilities to that contact tracing related to COVID, but it will only be as much focus on phone calls and direct to each person. They've always had other duties as assigned, but basically their duties is expanding as less cases day to day, but more responsibilities for reporting and tracking.
Recording and tracking, okay, thank you.
And believe me, we need
Yeah.
better recording and tracking, not just here, just in general.
Yeah.
I think yesterday's pretty good proof of that.
Yeah, it's one of those positions that, we wanted at the beginning of the pandemic and so this is what needs to happen now, but now it's been changed throughout. It's just a dynamic situation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ready for the minutes when the board is?
Yeah, I'm not able to pull mine up. I don't know if anybody else is, so I was gonna make maybe two options here to table it and do them on Monday, or if everybody's comfortable and it's read through, we can go and just make a motion now.
I didn't see anything in there that I
Yeah, I did.
disagreed with.
So you guys reviewed them?
Yeah, I reviewed them
Yeah.
already, so.
Yeah, so if you reviewed it previously and didn't have anything, you could absolutely make a motion to approve.
Okay, that's up to you.
No, you're comfortable.
I'll sub-
Yeah, I had trouble with my phone.
Yeah,
Couldn't get it over for a
Okay,
while.
it's not opening for me, so.
I don't know why I am and you guys
Yeah.
are. That's just kind of strange. I would make a motion to approve the minutes dated April 26, 2021. As written.
I'll second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded, all on the minutes from April, what was it again, 26th? Yeah, 2021. All those in favor?
Aye.
Tentative agendas with commissioners?
Good. I did speak with you about the issue I'm gonna have next Thursday so
Yeah.
far, so we'll have to figure out.
Yep, that gets into your schedule, and if we need to adjust something, we can make it a little shorter.
Okay.
Any items for next week's press conference, commissioners?
No, I think we got plenty on our plate.
Okay, next we have discussion of church renovation at 9:00.
Okay.
Okay.
That works for you?
Yeah.
I get your last name.
Joe Bosowski.
How do you spell that?
Yeah.
Excuse me,
GZ?
DZ, dog,
DZ.
zebra. EWALCOWS.
AL what? It's hard to hear you with the mask.
Okay, D like in dog, Z like in zebra, E, W,
Mhm.
A,
Mhm.
L,
Mhm.
T, O,
Mhm.
W,
Mhm.
S,
Mhm.
K.
Is that all the letters in the alphabet?
That is,
Thank you, appreciate it. I would have never gotten that right.
Okay. What is your time again? I know, Tom, okay. Full time for that? Okay, okay, that'll work.
Yeah, my office, when I go to open up the next page, it just sits there and looks at me.
Yeah, it's trying, but it's just not working. I got some minute tracks.
Yeah, wait till you get this, yeah, wait till you get this one. Which I get. I don't think there's sometimes when.
How you doing?
Here, that it's like, go ahead. Move forward.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. You can just pass them out.
Alright.
You can tell.
Yeah, so that's good, that way, when you retire from DJ, you got a little side.
You know, I lost, I don't know what, or how to word that, but is. Anytime he says you.
Yeah.
He will not come to you. He came in the office, okay? But they ask for the.
He doesn't understand why he's come here.
And he keeps talking about the neighbors when he's so too.
Yeah, I know.
Actually, 2 or 3 of the neighbors, some of the.
I don't think there's a real issue with it. I think it's possible, we see it with me, we pay for we offset it, and whoever wants to be part of that group is going forward and reading the application.
Yeah, he's paying.
Right.
But did he also want us to? Toll. Put a toll, they don't, you know, put a toll booth off the house.
Sounds.
Like, the commissioners will all tell you, I like all 4 seasons, summer's the one I like the least.
I mean, like, that's all this is difficult, is thing you want to be out there.
No, it's weird.
There's
Like, I was out yesterday just walking around my yard, I found a tree, and I don't know where it came from.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was on a tree or bush, but I don't know, I
Yeah.
didn't, it just something jumped on me, I thought, it's too early.
Yeah, that's kind
We may have a water. I don't know. I'm just, no.
of, yeah, it's too early for that.
I can understand it when I'm walking on a trail or
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
close to trees and stuff.
Cars. I don't get back, the very back is on the creek, but I don't know the back in there.
Yeah, well,
They
I,
don't make it far enough, or just make it far enough into the yard, I guess. K-State stuff, what you grad?
Construction science.
Oh, they tried, that's all.
Yeah.
Same building.
Yeah.
Me too.
So.
That's my degree's in too,
You did?
construction science.
Wow, fantastic.
Long time ago.
I kind of shifted over into industrial manufacturing, so maybe I don't use it to its full extent, but I do pretty well on
Exactly,
that.
doesn't school become a dean either.
Yeah. Life throws those wrenches at you. That's definitely true. So,
I had to remind some people that people aren't born deans.
no.
I bounced back.
But usually when you're young, you want to be a baseball player or a fireman or something, but you realize life just doesn't work that way.
Well, the group program.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess, the official is probably your.
One of them. Yeah, one
I
of
can
them.
do better than that. Stubby to the silver. Yeah, the original.
Okay, well, we are at 9 o'clock, so whenever you're ready.
Good morning, fellow commissioners and others in the audience. I became very interested in the First Christian Church building when it was purchased in 2020 by the previous commission. This purchase became one of the most prominent issues put forth by constituents during my campaign. Church building was originally designed by the same architect that designed our county courthouse and was a departure from the church architecture of the time. It was designed to harmonize with the courthouse and Carnegie Library, both of which have been renovated and used extensively by our county. The church itself was completed in 1909 with additions in 1938 and 1963. And although the two additions wrap around the original building, that structure can still be seen as you walk around inside the property. I've asked two professionals to speak to the commissioners today so that we can gain some fresh insight into the possibilities that exist for this property that has been in our community for 113 years. Each presenter will have approximately 10 minutes with some time for Q&A for each one. And so the first one will be Dean Timothy DeNoble. He is a professor and dean of the College of Architecture, Planning and Design at Kansas State since 2009. He led the funding and completion of the $75 million remodel and addition of the school's facility at Seton and Rainier Halls. If you haven't been there, you ought to go take a look at it because it's a beautiful building. Dean DeNoble has had an extensive and highly successful career, including administrative and academic experience in addition to a private practice. His background and his CV is very long, so if you want to take a look at his background, go to the K-State website and put in his name. So I'd like to welcome Dean DeNoble before the board to share his ideas on the church building going forward.
Thank you, sir.
Here we go.
Thank you.
Handout here. And go through that too. And then these I had to give back, but I want to do that as well, and if you could share it with Rich.
See a digital copy of that somewhere.
I have a couple things to say. Yeah.
So, thank you, Commissioner and Commissioners. So I am Tim DeNoble, and I am a fellow of the American Institute of Architects, and I serve as the Dean of the College of Architecture. But I want to be clear, I'm representing myself as a citizen today and not the university. I'm speaking as an architect with years of experience and practice, and also my role as Dean, actually, as a client in bringing a significant remodel in addition to fruition. So my purpose today is to actually highlight the value of conducting a clear, inclusive, and transparent assessment and programming of the current facilities and future needs of the Riley County administration, operations, and departments in order to establish a clear plan for future facilities expansion and replacement. As a part of this programming, one would expect in-depth analysis of existing facilities, current and future needs, implementation timelines, as well as imagery illustrating the breadth of options and opportunities for the county facilities and properties. So to be clear, I highly value the presence of the county administration offices in the heart of Manhattan. occupying these historic buildings as well, and hope that the number one priority of the county is to remain present in and symbiotically linked to the city center of Manhattan. To my knowledge, it's been 9 years since the completion of the master planning process conducted by BVN Architects. Needless to say, much has changed since that time, perhaps to the greatest extent the past 2 years. Programming and attendant conceptual imagery and diagrams in the case of the county do not necessarily generate private funds like they did for me, but these documents can very clearly point to the responsible stewardship of resources and underpin efforts to generate public support to advance needed facilities improvements. So I want to share with you a positive story regarding the remodel in addition to Seton Hall, home of the College of Architecture, Planning and Design on the K-State campus. And I hope that this example shows the value of considering existing facilities and the spatial fabric of our city. In my case, it was the spatial fabric of the campus. In your case, it's downtown Manhattan. So when I was hired as dean 12 years ago by Kurt Schultz, I was instructed that if I didn't do something about the sorry state of the facilities of Seton Hall, I will have failed as dean. And so that obviously became one of my primary goals. It was one of the largest deferred maintenance drains on the university. And interestingly, in a way counter to that, most of our students and alumni, in spite of its sorry state, considered it their once and future home. But I did have a few powerful alumni that advocated for its abandonment. So I hope to draw a parallel for you to consider in working to incorporate the First Christian Church into this study and into seeing how it might be, the ex-First Christian Church, I should say, into playing a role in this program. And I do also want to say that I'm speaking primarily of the 1909 sanctuary building, and I have to admit I have a kind of wonderful, fond appreciation of the incredibly unique 1962 east-facing facade. It is a period piece and pretty cool. It also is a contributor to an important space. In the case, we were able to do both with seating. We constructed a new building, reinvigorating the center of campus by revitalizing the oldest building on campus, Mechanics Hall, oldest extant building on campus of 1875, which is now termed Rainier Hall. And the original Seton Foundry building in 1912. A lot of people don't realize that the first Seton building was the east wing. It was symmetricized after that. So we incorporated perhaps our most special and honorific public space, the Rainier Forum, approximately 300-seat auditorium, in the wing of the former Mechanics Hall. That wing was actually built in, I believe, 1882 that added on to. Proof that an old, low-tech building can become a new high-tech space of great pride. So the documents I brought along show that not all, in my mind, not all old buildings are created equal. There were parts of Seton Hall that we had to extract if we wanted to build a building that reinvigorated the middle of campus. There were actually parts of Seton Hall that were condemned and boarded off. Some of those came out. And then perhaps the most difficult renovation that y'all see there was the incorporation of the Rainier Forum, that 300-seat auditorium in Mechanics Hall. There's some diagrams about how we put the structure in there. What I hope to show you is that we built on our traditional strengths and supported the activities and programs that helped us build our national reputation. So in spite of the weird facilities, in the end, we wanted a facility that was commensurate with our national reputation and quality. And in this little piece, and then excerpted really from this. What we did is we conducted everybody sees the final product, but this is what made the final product happen. And this is the kind of programming document that folks literally at OFPM over in Topeka said it was the best programming document they've ever gotten. And the reason it was so good is because of how inclusive it was in working with the staff, our faculty, our alumni, our students, our administration, others, ways of collecting data from those that work within the building, as well as those people's perceptions of the building and its role. And I think if you embark on, again, on such a thing, you'll get a document that will allow you to continue on in service to the staff, who tend to be more permanent than the commission. And that would be very helpful, I think, for the city. So a few other things I would like to say about again, I'm speaking as a parallel to what we should consider, not saying, hey, you should save the building regardless of whether it serves your purpose. I think you do a great programming document that shows how part of that building at least could in fact play a significant role for your administration. So a few things I'd like to say. One of the most perfectly scaled and potentially most precious spaces in Manhattan is the plaza, bounded by the county administration building, the ex-First Christian Church, the old courthouse, the Carnegie building and the Wareham also play into that, the gate, the trees, all contribute to the quality and scale of the space, admittedly undermined by being a parking lot, but even more special, I think it'd be even more special if found to the north across the street by another building, rather than open to parking. I don't think we should begin with an assumption that demolishing all or part of the First Christian Church building of 1909 with subsequent additions in 38 and 62 is the best course of action. Or should we assume that saving all or part of these buildings at the expense of meeting the needs of the departmental administration of the county is the correct course either. Our cities are full of empty spaces left where buildings were demolished to make way for future projects that never came. Imagine just pulling teeth and never replacing your teeth. That's what we've done since the 60s, unfortunately. Certainly demolishing, and I have to go with what I read in the paper sometimes, demolishing the entire First Christian Church structure in accommodation of surface parking would result in an uninterrupted parking paved surface from the Colony Square building on a northeast diagonal to the rear of the buildings at Leavenworth and 4th. Say goodbye to the wonderfully scaled space I'm talking about. So again, I just hope I'm here to advocate that you conduct a comprehensive programming study that includes spaces you have, the assets you own, with a high consideration of how you can, in parallel to what we did, take, as was pointed out by Commissioner Folk, a building that was built by an architect in accord with other buildings and incorporate that in some way to meet your future needs. We have the technology to do it. If I can put a 300-seat auditorium in a space that was once a 2-level space, bounded by approximately 18-inch thick stone walls that were unreinforced, and I can put that in there, and I can turn an old courtyard, which I included an image of, into a great interior space. I think we can do a lot with that facility in helping to meet the needs of the county. And I'm open to questions if anybody has any. That was easy.
Yeah.
It never happens in architecture school.
For the record, I spent a lot of time in Seton Hall, my time in university, particularly in the computer lab downstairs. I don't know where it's at.
We didn't get to remodel that.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, Dean DeNoble. I appreciate all your comments, and I hope that we've all learned a lot about the things that can happen. Next, I'd like to introduce Kathy Deswalski, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, who's a knowledgeable preservationist with 15 years of working in our community to preserve and protect cultural resources since 2006. She's experienced in bringing together stakeholders and experts to achieve successful project outcomes. She's currently the chair of the Polly Ogden chapter of the NSDAR, the secretary chair of the Friends of Peace Memorial Auditorium, and created a memorial wall to commemorate local servicemen killed in World War II. She's also an officer, director of the Manhattan Raleigh County Preservation Alliance, has served as their secretary, member of the board of directors, and is a very capable newsletter editor, which I really enjoy reading every month or every time it's published. So I welcome Kathy to speak for a few minutes, and if there's any questions, we should have a little time for that too.
Morning.
Morning.
Thank you for allowing us to speak here today about the First Christian Church. As mentioned, I am a member of the board of directors of the Manhattan Raleigh County Preservation Alliance. And I'm going to start with a little bit about the history. The commissioner already kind of discussed that, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but just to give you a little bit of history about the building. It was built, the original part of the building was built in 2 phases during 1908 and 1909. The congregation did desire to build a building of stone, which is why we have a stone building over there. They hired architect J.C. Holland, which, as mentioned, was the same architect that designed the Riley County Courthouse. The design was a departure from what was considered the conventional church architecture at the time, which was a reflection of what was happening in the Christian church. There was a movement to get away from your more traditional, conventional kind of church buildings. A quote from a 1908 Mercury described the church as, "The Manhattan Christian Church will look more like an Elks Club room than a church and will harmonize with the courthouse and the Carnegie Library." The estimated cost was $18,000 to $20,000, and I think today we would all love that price tag to build a 2-story stone building of that size.
Yeah.
But at the time, the congregation didn't quite have the funds to build it at that cost. So they decided to do 1 phase and build part of it that was described as the first basement story. I'm not sure what exactly a first basement story is today, if that means they just built the basement or they built the basement and the first floor, but in any case, it wasn't the entire building. And that part of it was completed in November 1908, but it wasn't very long after that, so the church realized that wasn't really adequate, that wasn't really meeting their needs. So they collected pledges to be able to have the funds to build the rest, and they built the 2nd story, and it was completed the following year in November 1909, the original part of the building. An educational wing was added on in 1938, and then the major renovation in 1962 that created the appearance that it has today, that added that new narthex up front, added more educational space, and remodeled the sanctuary. The First Christian Church building has been a part of this community's cultural landscape for more than a century, and it is a significant building in Manhattan's downtown. For many years, Manhattan has worked to improve the downtown area, and the revitalization of existing historic structures is an important piece of this overall effort to make Manhattan's downtown a vibrant spot in our community, and also one that retains its historic charm and character. Once you start removing those buildings with historic charm and character and build brand new things, well, then you become any town, anywhere in USA. You lose what makes Manhattan, Manhattan. One of the things that preservationists think about when a historic building is being considered for renovation is it potentially eligible for historic registry listing. And part of the reason we look to that is because there are a number of financial benefits available for properties on the historic register. I have briefly communicated with Patrick Zollner, who is the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer, about whether or not the building would potentially be eligible for registry listing. And his opinion, with just the little bit of information that he has right now, is that it would probably be eligible for the State Historic Register and possibly also for the National Historic Register. Preparing a register nomination for an individual property is a little bit of a process. There's quite a bit of detail that has to be developed and investigated for an individually listed property. So another option that Mr. Zollner mentioned was the possibility of expanding the downtown historic district. In case you're not aware, downtown is a nationally registered historic district. And the boundary, is just placed such that the church is barely just outside. And I brought a map, I will leave that here. The boundary comes along 5th Street and the church is here. And this is the county office building where the treasurer's office and the clerk's office is and so forth. So the boundary just excludes the church. So he said that perhaps an option might be to expand the boundaries of the historic district. And the reason that might be a good option is because buildings that are considered contributing to the overall theme of an historic district are eligible for the same benefits as an individually listed property. But when you determine whether a building is contributing, there's a lot less research and extensive detail that has to be developed just to determine if it contributes to the overall theme. So that might be a quicker way to get it eligible for all those historic registry benefits as opposed to developing the more detailed individual nomination. So I just want to mention that that's another potential option. And just in case anyone's not aware, the county does own 3 buildings currently that are on both the state and national register. One is the Riley County Courthouse. The second is the Carnegie Library that has county offices in it. And then the third is the Jeremiah Platt House at 2005 Claflin that is currently leased by the Genealogical Society. So I want to mention just a few of the benefits of registry listings so you can understand how this could be very helpful to a renovation project. First is the Kansas State Tax Credit, and I want to read this exactly so I make sure I have the information to use as correctly as possible. Properties listed on the state register are potentially eligible for the state rehabilitation tax credit. The Kansas State Tax Credit is equal to 25% of qualifying expenses incurred during a qualified project on a qualified building. Qualified buildings are those that are listed on the state or national registers or that are contributing structures in a historic district, like I just mentioned. That would be an option for this building. Project expenses must be at least $5,000 to be eligible. Don't think that would be a problem here. And the rehabilitation plan needs to be reviewed and approved by the State Historic Preservation Office before work begins. State tax credits may be transferred or sold to other taxpayers. The sale of tax credits takes place in the market, and there are various companies that are expert in handling such transactions. And if this was an option the county was going to pursue, they probably would need to consult one of those experts. Property owners, such as government entities, can't use tax credits. They transfer the entirety of the tax credits, and they transfer the tax credits in exchange for cash. In other words, you'd be able to sell those tax credits for cash. The market for tax credits has typically been about 80 to 90% of the value, 80 to 90 cents on the dollar. I will say since the pandemic, I'm not totally sure what that market is, if that's still quite that strong. But just to give you an example of what that would mean, and I'm going to just pick something to make easy math. If it was going to be $1 million project and it was eligible for 25%, that would be $250,000 of tax credits. We'll take 80% as the value, we'll use the low end. If it was sold for 80% of that value, that would be $200,000. That would just be cash coming back to the county. So, $1 million project suddenly becomes an $800,000 project. It's a solid way to help you with a renovation project and reduce the cost. There is also a federal tax credit, which is available for properties on the national register, but the property has to be income producing. So I wasn't going to go into a bunch of detail about that because unless part of that building was going to be leased or somehow develop income, that wouldn't really be an option. But if it was going to be partially leased, that might be something that the county wants to investigate at some point. Another thing I also wanted to mention is that tax credits are not available for new construction. So if there was a renovation project that involved renovating the historic part of the building and a new addition was added, the new addition part would not be eligible for the tax credit. So that was the part about qualified project, qualified expenses. That part would not qualify. I'll quickly touch on this in terms of tax credits. In 2009, the Kansas Preservation Alliance, which is the statewide preservation organization, contracted with the Center for Urban Policy Research at Rutgers University to ask them to study the state tax credit program. And the study concluded that that Kansas receives substantial benefits as a result of projects aided by the tax credit program. During the years that were studied, $69 million were invested in the form of state tax credits, which resulted in a return of $271 million being spent in the state on these renovation projects, in the form of hiring contractors and architects and purchasing materials and all of that. So that's approximately a 1-to-4 ratio of the return on investment. So for every dollar that the state issues in tax credits, 4 times that amount comes back to the state in terms of revenue spent on the project. Just in case you're wondering about how's that going to work, it does actually bring a lot of revenue into the state. A couple of other funding options I want to mention. One is the Heritage Trust Fund. The Heritage Trust Fund is a state program that provides matching funds for the preservation of properties listed on the state or national registers. Individual grant awards do not exceed $90,000 and they must be matched by the recipient. The Heritage Trust Fund is supported by a mortgage filing fee, which is collected by counties' registers of deeds. The courthouse received Heritage Trust Fund monies for improvements to the clock tower in 2008 and also to replace first floor windows in 2010. So the county does have experience with using this funding source for registered properties. Another option is the Historic Preservation Fund. That is administered by the State Historic Preservation Office and is used to finance local preservation activities that contribute to planning for the preservation of the built environment or archaeological resources. Up to 60% of the costs of eligible activities can be funded with this program. Projects, though, do have to result in a tangible product. One example that the state had on its website of what would be considered a tangible product would be developing a preservation plan for a historic property. So that would certainly seem like that would be applicable to the church if you moved forward with a renovation project. The city of Manhattan recently received a Heritage Preservation Fund in 2019 to conduct a historic resources survey of Aggieville. So that's a local example, and you could probably visit with the city about how that worked if you were interested in that. I know there's been a lot of comments made about how a lot of materials have been removed from the church, and that's kind of a problem. But I would suspect that if a major renovation was going to be taken underway here, that a lot of those things that were removed are things that were going to be removed anyway. So I don't know that that's a serious drawback. You probably would be looking at upgrading HVAC and plumbing and electrical anyway. So I don't know that that's necessarily a reason to consider that a huge drawback. All right, in conclusion, the Manhattan-Raleigh County Preservation Alliance is supportive of maintaining the First Christian Church building and renovating it to meet the county's needs. The local Preservation Alliance is comprised of a group of knowledgeable volunteers, but to really receive expert information and guidance, we recommend that the State Historic Preservation Office be consulted. They are the experts, they're close by in Topeka. They'd be happy to come over here and visit with the county about the process for registry listing, how to use tax credits, any of the other grant programs. And they're not going to say, you have to save it. They will provide you with the straight up information of what's the ins and outs of these various programs that I mentioned. So to really get that information, I only have a few minutes here, you really should visit with the state to get the full story. And I urge you to really explore these options before making any final decisions. And closing thought I just like to share, demolition is forever. You can't take that back once you decide to demolish something. There's no changing your mind once it's gone. Communities often regret those past decisions that they made to tear down a significant community landmark, but they can't take it back. But on the other side, I don't think anybody ever says, man, I really wish we'd torn that down. All right, that concludes my comments. Any questions or?
Any questions? It seems this, we had somebody give us this write-up on it. It has a picture of the front of the building, which looks real nice, but none of that's, when you talk about demolition, none of that's there.
That's correct.
The front of all, it does have, it was an interesting front of this building. That's it. But as you said, demolition, it's not there. The only part there is just the box part of the building.
That's correct. Sometimes we made, what I would consider not the best decisions in the past when we thought we were modernizing buildings. A lot of downtown buildings in the past were covered with aluminum slip covers. I don't know if you've ever seen any of those historic pictures that we all thought was the way that we were modernizing. And then we wise up and realize that was not the best option.
Remodel.
Yes, that's a good
Yeah.
Put it out.
And there's a lot of, when the craftsman style came in vogue in the twenties, the teens and twenties, a lot of people tacked on a craftsman porch on their house, even though they had an Italianate or some other style. I'm gonna make my house look modern and trendy, and I'm gonna stick a craftsman porch up front.
Well, do you think that if that front could be restored to the original look, would that be something that we might want to consider?
Well, I mean, that would certainly be wonderful and lovely. Would that be needed for you to use the building or for it to be on the register? Well, this is where, to be on the register, a property needs to be 50 years old. And sometimes things that have been altered to the building or additions, if they're also 50 years old, they're considered now part of the building and they're just as historically significant as the original. So it would not have to be returned to that just for the county's uses, if that's your question. I can give you another example is the depot. I'm sure a lot of you know the depot was renovated over a lengthy time. It was finally completed and opened in 2006, but there was some renovations that happened before that. But the tower that's there now, the main front, that's a reconstruction. That was torn down many years ago, was damaged by storms and was leaking and was removed, and that was a reconstruction. So, it's certainly a possibility. Would it have to be done? Probably not.
Okay.
I didn't have a
Questions?
question.
Okay, well, thank you very much for giving us this presentation.
Yeah.
Learned a lot about tax credits, which I didn't know anything about, so. Have any?
Did you need, yeah, I thought you said, that's why I took a chance to flip through it while you were talking, while somebody was talking there so I could see it, so.
Can I give it back to you later?
You can, you
Okay.
can share.
Okay.
Nice to meet you, Tim.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time this
Thanks
morning.
for coming in, Kathy.
Okay, moving on, we have Shelley, the grant application. Morning.
Make sure it's big enough for my eyes to see it. Okay. Yeah, killed a few more trees this year with our grant application. I can't wait till it's all online and automated and we don't take up so much of your packet and our packets as well. It should be noted that this is a planning allocation, and so we get our final numbers usually after the omnibus bill is passed, and so it is subject to change. Haven't seen that in many years, but it is subject to change based on the legislature. This is the same amount of allocation for adult services that we have for this current year, which ends June 30th. This is a new budget document, and I will take you there in a second. It was the Kansas Department of Corrections' first attempt, based on recommendations from us in the field, to combine the adult and juvenile services budgets, at least the budget documents. They're both run by the Kansas Department of Corrections. But we've always submitted two separate documents and we track it separately. And so this was kind of their first attempt. So with that, there were some funding or formula errors that we found and discovered yesterday. So I'm going to go over the amounts that differ slightly from what was submitted based on those formula errors. Juvenile services, this allocation has actually been the same since state fiscal year 2017, or the last 6 years. It's difficult for me to wrap my mind around flat funding for the last 6 years, but that is where we are. Of those 6 years, just so you folks know, all but one of those did the county not take the COLA or merit increase. And so while you have flat funding, as my personnel increase costs go up, actually have less funding because it's eating away with the increased personnel cost. This is the first year in my tenure, and I had to do some math on that as the director, 14 years, that 100% of both of our grant allocations are going for personnel costs. I had nothing left over for operations out of the state dollars, out of my state budgets, which is a little concerning to say the least. Depending on what you folks decide with your 2022 budget, with the COLA and the merit, we will need to make adjustments accordingly. So just kind of wanted to give you a heads up. And what does that mean, especially for the 2 new ones? There have been years in the past where community corrections has not been able to take either the COLA and or the merit, despite the other county employees being able to get those. Sometimes because our funding is state, we have to pull back and not give those. And so once you make your decision, I'll be back to visit with you and have those conversations. This does not impact the services, direct services for clients or our drug court, because we've been really aggressive in getting outside funding sources. So we have city alcohol funds, Greater Manhattan community funds, county alcohol funds. You folks gave us some county appropriations last year. We have a Kansas Department of Health and Environment overdose grant and a Carolyn Pine Foundation grant. So as you can see, we have done a really good job in sustaining direct services for our clients with these outside funding entities. Some good news, a little good news, if you will. Pull this down.
Oh, yeah, you can
Take it
mask
off.
off.
Okay, thanks. The first time that the Community Corrections Advisory Committee, which is a statewide committee made up of 6 directors out of 31 in the state, it's the first time that we've submitted our report to the Secretary of Corrections in advance, in enough time for him to take into consideration our recommendations of a budget increase. And so we met with the Deputy Secretary of Corrections a week and a half ago, and are asking that the secretary within his budget to the governor, which is due, I think, September 1st or 15th, that he request an increase for community corrections. And so I'm an optimistic person, and there's a little bit of silver lining in that. In addition to us submitting our recommendations in advance to the Secretary of Corrections, the Kansas Community Corrections Association, we are meeting June 3rd, and I anticipate we will align our funding increase with both the Community Corrections Advisory Committee as well as hopefully whatever the Secretary may increase. So moving forward into next year's legislative session, I am hopeful there will be 3 entities asking for the same amount for increase to community corrections statewide. So I will keep you folks updated on that. The Joint Corrections Advisory Board, which is statutorily required to review the applications, they have reviewed the juvenile services application minus the budget, again, because that document was tied in with the adult one. They met, I think, April 8th, but they also meet again today, and they too have to approve these grants before they go forward. Typically, I like for that process to happen before I come down here in case they have any recommendations or changes to it. But if need be, I can always come back on Monday, because they're not due till 5 o'clock on Monday, and Topeka being as close as it is, I can drive up there. So keep your fingers crossed on that as well.
Love those short deadlines, don't you?
Yeah. So I want to bring your attention to a couple of things that have changed since the submission, partly because of the funding errors that we discovered, but also partly because we have a contract position with Pawnee Mental Health, and it's the care coordinator position, Brett Bruning. And as of this morning, their insurance, I discovered, went up the second half of state fiscal year 22, which would be January 1st of 22 through June 30th, is going up $2,000. Their state unemployment went up from 0.17 to 0.25, which are those far right columns, I and J. And then their capers went up from 9 to 9.89. So all in all, I need to increase what I'm asking for the care coordinator position, an additional $2,656. Which brings the grand total on the far right to $871,752.73. I can highlight what those individual amounts total to. $355,835.43 is for adult services. $315,779.30 is for juvenile services. $26,170 is for our parent project, which is our parent education curriculum that we just finished 2 classes, one in Clay and one in Riley. And $67,230 is for our youth court immediate intervention program. And then contractual, that $94,894 includes that care coordinator position increases as well. Is that correct, Jesse? The contractual, that's where Brett's is.
Yes, plus about 5,000 in client services.
Okay. So before you ask, well, Shelley, you don't have any money for operations. How are you going to pay for cell phones for juvenile intake? How are you going to pay for car insurance? How are you going to pay for things to operate the department? And we have what's called carryover reimbursement dollars. And those dollars are generated by, if we sell a vehicle, if we charge $100 supervision fees for adult clients, we attempt to recoup money for positive drug tests for offenders in which we have laboratory costs. That's about it. It doesn't increase a lot over the years, about $3,000 a year on the adult side, and juvenile has remained pretty consistent or flat because we don't charge a supervision fee for the juvenile offenders as their parents end up paying it along with their court costs and other items. So we will be extremely conservative and only pay for what we have to pay for, which would be, of course, our copy machine, car insurance, cell phones, telephones, landlines. I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple of line items, and be just really conservative this next fiscal year. With that, we have unfunded liabilities, and I'll draw your attention to the screen. You can see the years of service here starting on line 4 and going across. And this plays into why we don't have as much money as some of my partnering agencies across the state, is because of the longevity that we possess within our department, which is a positive in more factors than a negative. But that does attribute to the high personnel costs. If this column E person were to leave, I would need to pay out 160 hours of extended sick leave, as well as 211 vacation hours. And so all in all, that totals $13,000 that I would need to pay if that person were to leave today or tomorrow. That is not something that I believe you folks want to pay for at the county level. And so I have to make sure I have that money available in my carryover reimbursement account, which again are those revenue dollars that come in from clients or the sale of an item. Jesse jokingly did remind me yesterday, we have a pretty new 10-passenger van sitting out there that I could get a little bit of money for, but we're gonna need that with drug court moving forward. So I don't think I can start selling things yet, but so with that, the money that I have to have in savings is broken down according to the percent that they're taken out of each fund. So this individual with the most leave, I believe 60% comes out of adult services and 40% comes out of juvenile services. And I just want you to know that is not me, even though it said my name. I tend to use my leave when I get it. So we do have to have $13,000 set aside, and I wanted to bring that to your attention as well. Of course, this is something that is concerning. I just discovered it yesterday and the day before as we were finishing up these budgets, and we will definitely keep you informed. And it might be a situation where we have to make some staffing adjustments at some point mid-fiscal year. Not desirable. Had to do it many times in my tenure, but it is something that I have to do. Which, could result from furloughs across the board to maybe moving a position to 3/4 time to half time, or eliminating a position, which not sure if you were in office when we eliminated a position last April because of the same thing. And then didn't fill a position in 2013 for the same reason, and then let someone else go in 2011 for the same reason. So it is not an uncommon decision that I have to make, unfortunately, one that is wearing on me, certainly being a social work person, but it is the reality. This, of course, increases staff's anxiety and interferes, with their ability to some extent to maintain a positive outlook moving forward and dealing with the difficult individuals that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. We don't deal with your typical individual in the community. And so with that, we do our best to keep staff plugging along up there and to stay positive. And we've done something right because of the tenure you could see across the board. We have great staff, and I'm going to meet with them right now because I don't want them to hear about this on the radio later. But I will keep you informed, and need this to be approved at least Monday by 5. So.
I can't pull anything up, so I can't see I pull off the paper.
Oh, I have the motions.
Maybe somebody else has been able to get theirs.
Yeah,
Mine's working.
And this one there.
Okay.
They did say that minute track was down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where are we at?
When you're saying need to adjust, you saying the dollars need to be adjusted, is that what's going to happen?
Just one of them, the 104, I believe is around 94,000, and that was because of the mainly the reduction is because of the errors in the formulas.
Yeah. I would probably make the suggestion at this point in time, because this needs to be pretty accurate, to get those updated numbers and then bring it back Monday.
Works
Okay.
perfect.
Okay.
Especially that way, if the Joint Corrections Advisory Board makes any other recommended changes to you folks, we can kind of pull it together all on Monday.
No, I
I understand the real tight deadline there.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay.
I was planning on either driving it up Friday or Monday, so that is not a problem.
Okay.
Would you like for me to come back during the business meeting? Would
Yeah,
that
just
be
have
enough?
Cindy get on during the business meeting.
Okay, that'll be enough time.
And we'll get it through.
Just get the right numbers.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
No need to joke or anything.
Okay, all right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, Commissioners, 9:50, the mask mandate discussion. Sir, go ahead.
No.
Okay.
I'm fully aware.
Oh, I would, yeah.
So which one, I'm just, we're,
It's the current one.
yeah, which one, we're number 21 now? Is that where we are? Okay, that's, cause I had to thought back, I thought we were on 20, but I forgot to look that. We're on number 21 right now.
Yeah. I've got copies in case anybody wants.
Okay, we are at 9:50. What I'll probably do here to start with is we'll start with discussions from you, Julie. Give us an update, give us your thoughts, recommendations, opinions. I know David's here as well to fill in any other gaps, offer any other suggestions. Then I will leave a little bit of time for any public comment that will come up along the way here since we have 15 minutes for the item. And then from there, I'll move it back over to the commission and we'll discuss it from that point. So,
Sure.
and you might just wait till, I guess we're down one.
Yeah, appreciate it. Dave.
Okay, Julie, go ahead.
Okay, good morning. I just have a few numbers here for you and some other information that's been requested for our discussion of the mask mandate. So you probably saw the report that came out yesterday, but as of yesterday, we had 34 new cases since last Wednesday, which puts us at 42 total active cases. Out of those active cases, we're only following one outside of Manhattan. Our percent positive has stayed under 5% for over 3 months now. We were at 1.09% the week prior to last, and last week we were at 1.7%. No one in the hospital at this time. As far as vaccination efforts, we are now doing first doses at the FCRC parking lot under our tent on Mondays through Wednesdays. We are seeing about 80 people per day. Last week we had 243 appointments made Monday through Wednesday and ended up having 38 no-shows over those 3 days. When I asked Corey in IT for numbers from our booster clinics last week, he said he sent invites to 1,449 individuals who needed their second shot, and out of those, 1,031 actually made appointments, and we vaccinated 1,027. So only 4 no-shows out of those who made their appointments. The 418 difference of invites minus appointments made is likely people getting their boosters somewhere else. He also mentioned they have done some spot checking with some older dose 1 dates who did not have a booster recorded, and they find that most get their boosters somewhere else. So it's good to know that they're getting their boosters somewhere else at least. Looking at Monday through Wednesday of next week, we only have 34 out of the 324 appointment slots filled, and we still show that we have about 376 requests to go. That leads us to believe people are getting them elsewhere as they go. We have a booster clinic today and tomorrow at Seco, and then next Thursday will be our last big booster clinic out of Seco. From there, we'll move all of our operations to the health department. Our RADX team visited $7 Church last Sunday and vaccinated 30 individuals after Spanish Mass. We had to use the Moderna vaccine, so we'll go out again in 4 weeks to give them their booster. We do have the go-ahead to administer J&J vaccine again, so we'll continue to do that for our remote clinics and any housebound or homebound individuals from here on out. We do have about 60 remaining homebound individuals to get to, and we'll get to them by the end of next week. Other than that, I asked Jake yesterday afternoon for numbers as far as how many we've fully vaccinated. For Riley County residents, we fully vaccinated 14,341, which is about 23% of those who are eligible to receive the vaccine. And about 17,976 Riley County residents have at least received one dose, which is right at about 29% of those eligible. The state shows us a little higher, that shows that number a little higher at 35%, and Renee has even a higher number. She's been doing a lot of research for clinics in areas around Riley County, not just within Riley County, to see about Riley County residents. Her number is looking more like 45% for first dose, and that's out of those who are eligible to receive the vaccine. So we're still under half, but it's looking a little bit more promising. We're slowly getting there. So I was asked to reach out to some of the school districts to talk about, we're discussing this today. I let them know we're discussing this today and what their thoughts are. You've seen the response from USD 383. I did contact John Cox, the superintendent at 384. He said that it would be up to the board. So he didn't really give me any indication of what the board would think. But I did get an email from Cliff Williams at USD 378. Board of Education and admin teams would like to recommend the commission continue their procedures until the scheduled expiration date of May 16th. He says they feel, and this is the board, it would create a divide among students, staff, and parents, i.e. families who keep their kids at home, staff will not report out of fear, etc. He also provided some data to help drive the decision. He says, we've only experienced one spike of positive COVID cases amongst our students and staff. 2% has been the highest spike. Over 800 students and staff enter the buildings every day. They've been in school the whole year. He said staff absenteeism has dropped off the table. The number of remote learners has dropped from an average of 25 to 30 per building to low single digits. When families are asked, why did you return? They have stated it's because you have proven it is safe and you will follow procedures as described. So their recommendation is to keep the mask mandate in place, but they will follow whatever the county decides to do.
Well,
No.
but they have the
They have
authority
the
to do whatever they want to
Yes.
do regardless. So
Yes.
that's a key point in all this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Okay. A lot there. That one last point there, I think is key. So if I'm looking at this right, one current case outside the city, do you know where that's at?
No.
Okay. As of this morning, any changes at the hospital or any other facility?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Did you have anything else to add, David?
No, not really. I was just going to, come here.
Yeah, please. And you can demask if you need to.
No, the only other thing I was gonna add is kind of how the command staff looked at things like this, and just kind of give you a little bit of background, if I may. So when we looked at something like this over all the orders and all the restrictions that we were tasked with, we looked at two separate items, if you will. We looked at the totality of the circumstance. We looked at the big picture. So we looked at, the healthcare. Is the healthcare overwhelmed? Is it under control? We looked at, then we got looking at, as it progressed, we got looking at who's most vulnerable. So we looked at healthcare workers, first responders, school staff, and things like that. So we looked at those. Then we looked at just the schools in general. And as you just said, now that they have the ability to make their own regulations, where before they really didn't, and we had to intercede and when the schools were closed, that was because they didn't really know a lot of information and they weren't sure how to process it. So, and then the other thing we looked at is we looked at the data, and the data helped kind of drive our decisions. So, currently we have 42 active cases in the community, one outside the city of Manhattan. I did not ask where, because it's all.
That's
So I'm talking about the county, to not everybody. So.
I don't know if it's maybe in one of the other cities or just some random location.
Sure.
Something along those lines. And along those same lines, is there any specific demographical makeup of those 42? Is it staying in the young population, the older population?
It's mainly at anywhere from 18 to 35, that's the majority of our newer.
So it tends to be in what we would consider to be the a little more healthier, maybe not smarter necessarily, but healthier population.
And then we would also have looked
And
at.
I'm insinuating that everybody is dumb in that population.
But the other things that we looked at is we always talked about the percent positivity rate, and people would come back and they would say, well, you're not testing enough, or you're getting more positives because you're testing more people. We just looked at the rate, because the data is what the data is. And then the last thing in something like this that we would have looked at would have been St. Patrick's Day and Easter. Because we always look at those big times where people would come together. We looked at Thanksgiving, Christmas, Super Bowl. And so we would have looked at those as well and see, was there a spike? Was there something that alarmed us? And, but those are just some of the things that we would look at to help drive our decisions. And I thought we'd just share that with you so you would kind of know kind of what we looked at, how we came to the conclusions that we came to.
Okay, appreciate it. Any questions for David or Julie at this time? Okay, seeing none, I'll, if anybody here has any brief statements they would like to make on the subject, I'll entertain that at the moment. I don't see anybody up on Zoom. That's what I was expecting after this, but. Okay, seeing none, I'll close off that discussion and then we'll go ahead and shift back to the commission here. And I'm going to start with you, Commissioner McKinley, just because you asked for this time and asked for this discussion. So,
And again, like I said, 1 out of 42 are outside city of Manhattan. And a third of the population of the county is outside of Manhattan. It's not happening outside. I did get a lot of calls. I don't know if you checked, I looked at it. Everyone that said we should extend the mask ordinance lives inside Manhattan.
Yeah.
And everyone says we should stop it lives outside the city of Manhattan.
And I will tell you from my perspective and dealing with this for the last year, that's been about as consistent. That's been one of the only really consistent things, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah.
So not a surprise there. And like I said, for me, I didn't really get any phone calls, but emails,
Yeah.
it was just 50-50, and that's been pretty consistent. So, okay.
Like I say, that's
Anything
why
else you wanting to add?
I say that we need to be done.
Okay. Well, Commissioner Foki, I'm sure you've got something to add.
Of course.
We all do. So I'm giving everybody an opportunity.
Well, I'm concerned if we do vacate it right now, like within 2.5 weeks of it expiring anyway, that we got to break a commitment that we made to the university. I know they're concerned about it. The city was pretty disappointed that we were even considering this. I don't know what 2.5 weeks is how that's really going to impact people in the county or that kind of thing. It's not, we're almost done with this mask mandate, and I just don't see the reasoning for. But
I'll do it just in
right
case.
now.
Okay. Okay. I do have a letter from the university. Linda Cook, Chief of Staff and Director of Community Relations, said that she had a scheduling conflict that wouldn't be able to join us this morning, but they have seconded that notion of supporting that up and through the 16th. And I get where they're coming from. I get where the other school districts are coming from. I get where the other cities coming from. But what all these entities also don't understand is that we have a different dynamic and a different part of the population to represent than they do. And it is a significant part of that. And if we had some of the issues that we had in late fall and maybe early into the year, that I would take that into consideration, but we're not seeing that at this point in time. I can't sit here and tell you from where we stand that that's going to be consistent throughout, that maybe we don't run into some way, but we can run into that with them or without them, either one. Hopefully, like I said, I just knocked on wood, so I won't do it again, but hopefully we don't get back to that point, but that could happen either way, whether we have one or we don't have one, because it has, and it just has happened here when I say that. The other thing for me that's difficult in these conversations is, I can deal with just the stress of people yelling and screaming and cursing and threatening and doing all those things. I can handle that. I've handled it pre-pandemic. I've handled it during the pandemic. It's going to be a constant, not just this issue, every other issue post-pandemic. But I got to be able to defend it. And that's the issue here for me. I can't, when there's one case outside of there, the healthcare system isn't overwhelmed. Schools and, let me point out, businesses still have that reflection to do what they want to do. We're not going to mandate that you don't wear a mask or you don't take these safety precautions into consideration. Because personally, I think everybody should. I think everybody has that duty and responsibility, not just to themselves, but the communities they live in, to do that. I'm not here to say they are or aren't, but that's not going to be taken off the table here by simply removing this. I can't defend that. When somebody comes at you with that, I just have to kind of just sit there. There's just nothing I can say to defend it. I'm a policymaker. I make policy. I'm not a healthcare expert. I'm not a public health expert. I'm never going to be, but common sense and sensibility tells me that I need to be able to defend those actions, whether they're coming from one sector or from me, because ultimately that's where the decision lies. And at the moment, I'm just not really able to do that. And it's outside of just the conversations, which, like I said, I can handle. That's a real frustrating and uncomfortable thing at this point in time. So that's where I've pretty much been since the beginning of April. I know that we're trending the right way, and I think that's because of the work and the dedication and the response and planning and everything that we've done, and we've done that well. It's not perfect, and it may still not be perfect, but I do feel pretty comfortable where we're at. I've also noticed in the last couple of weeks in particular that places that I go, whether they're outside the city or inside the city, less and less people are effectively doing this anyway. I don't engage them in any way, shape, or form. I just have tried to take a little broader view of what's going on around me as I'm in and out of different places, and I'm starting to see that too. And I know there's a lot of people that, regardless of what we decide, will either continue to wear them just because that's what it is, but probably still don't want to at this point in time. And I'm not saying that's the right reason or the wrong reason to do that, but that is part of the consideration as we try to discuss this. That's really, for the most part, all I have on the subject here. And I know we slotted 15 minutes and we're over that, but that's fine. So, we can discuss that however. So I would be more than comfortable letting it go at this particular point in time. I don't have a problem with that. The one thing I would maybe ask on that, and I know that as we've gone through this process, it's been hard to try to make decisions and try to react on a moment's notice. So a rescission today specifically to me doesn't make clear sense. If we're going to go this direction, I would suggest that maybe we wait it out through the rest of the week and the weekend and maybe let it go on Sunday evening. It gives everybody outside the county, it gives schools, it gives everybody an opportunity to at least react, formulate some plans, and develop that specifically instead of having to run in a mad panic to try to figure out how to react to it.
What's the panic to react to it? I mean,
so schools and everybody else are going to have to quickly make some decisions about what they want to do at this point.
Yeah, that's their. I mean,
right. But they're going to have to make that decision on the spot. We've had to do that as a county several times for reactions that the states come down with.
But whatever we do doesn't affect what they do at all. They're allowed to do. They could have eliminated the mask in their schools.
Right. But they're now going to have to sit down and take a look at that again, regardless. Other businesses need the opportunity to react with their people and their staff as well and make whatever valuable decision that they feel necessary within their four walls.
It's kind of cutting it short for people.
Mm-hmm.
As far as, like calling a school board meeting takes some time. You have to have a certain, 10 days.
And maybe they don't necessarily have to, but I would feel comfortable if we're going to do this suddenly that we do it in a manner that at least gives everybody that opportunity, because I would want that opportunity in reverse.
Okay. Should have been done weeks ago, but
that's water under the bridge now. Where we're at is where we're at. So what I'll go ahead and do then is I'll go ahead and make a motion that, and I don't know how to language this specifically, but go ahead and rescind local order 21 on whatever that date is. I guess that'd be Sunday, May 2nd at 11:59 a.m.
Yeah.
What time is that again, John?
I guess that'd be PM, sorry, 11:59 PM. That's the motion.
I'll second.
Okay. That motion has been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay. No extensions, obviously, so that motion passed. And I think, if I'm not mistaken,
Guys.
thank you, David. Thank you, Julie.
Next, Commissioner, you have Mr. Holman's time.
Yes, and I think Mr. Holman is wanting an executive session. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm assuming so. I have one laying on my desk.
It wasn't on the actual agenda, I don't think, was it?
No.
Once again, I'm having to work off a paper here. Okay. So I will go ahead and make a motion that we add an executive session to Clancy Holman's time.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I will go ahead then and make the full motion. County commissioners, including Commissioner Ford, Commissioner McKinley, and Commissioner Foki, along with Elizabeth Ward, Human Resource Manager, Russell Stuckey, Emergency Services Director, and Clancy Holman, County Counselor, Attorney for the Commission, recess into executive session pursuant to the non-elected personnel matters, exception to the Kansas Open Meetings Act, to discuss an applicant's interview for the position of Deputy Chief, discuss compensation, and possibly make a conditional offer of employment, and to protect the privacy of the applicants. The open meeting to resume in the County Commission chamber at 10:25 a.m. Procedural. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Get a motion?
Okay, I go ahead and move that the Board of County Commission come out of executive session.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
We'll also move that the record reflect action shall be taken consistent with the consensus reached in executive session.
A second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Did I get that right, Tyler?
Yeah.
Okay.
You hiring?
Yeah. Got a position? Sorry. Might be a little counterproductive there. Okay, Clancy, you got one other item on the agenda, notice.
One other item, just real brief.
Okay.
We have a resolution, I have a proposed resolution extending our current declaration of local disaster emergency. As the CAR points out, those began as a result of the pandemic back in March. And they have been, in each time that they were, for a given period of time, each time they've been extended by previous boards. The primary purpose of the declaration of local disaster emergency, as the CAR indicates, is not to put any restriction on it. This isn't like a mask order. This is totally separate. What it does is it gives the county the ability to have access to state resources and to have access to any kind of reimbursement for costs that are incurred as responding to that emergency. So no restrictions whatsoever on any entity or any individual. With that, having talked with Russell Stuckey, Emergency Services Director, he said it makes sense to him to keep this in place for another 90 days. That's why this extension lasts 90 days and expires on July 29th of this year. You can always come back in later. Things develop so that it's not even needed. You can repeal it at any time. Unless you have questions, I've just asked for a motion to approve it.
Just as a memory refresher, where is the state's at the moment?
Which
The state has one in place till when?
I think it expires, I think that expires May 28th.
That's what I thought too.
I'm thinking that's the date. I know that's when all the executive orders.
I was thinking they extended it though.
Okay, I don't remember.
Yeah, it shouldn't. This is, and that's a great question because this is totally separate. This is not tied to an executive order authority. It's tied to a state statute that gives you the independent authority and still does to declare local disaster emergency for those two reasons, reimbursement and access to state resources.
I don't have any issues with it at this time, so, okay. We'll need a motion.
Move the board approve, or I move the board approve the resolution as presented.
Yeah, we don't have the minute track, so we can't pull up all the.
I don't even, I've gone further, I don't even have a laptop.
I would second that.
Okay, that motion to extend the local declaration of emergency for Riley County. So seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, that's all.
All three, please. Thanks, Clancy.
Thank you.
Next, you have John Ellerman.
Alice, will you put something out on social media on that?
I'm not writing a press release right now.
Oh, okay.
Oh, about the mask mandate or about the,
Well, I guess at this point in time, both.
to say I've got the mask mandate in there right now.
Yeah, that's it.
Ready for me? No, I want to wait till these signs here, John. Okay.
Ran a little bit behind, sorry.
No problem.
All right, got you.
Yeah,
I got you.
signing up.
Or if I need to sign into the bullpen.
Yeah.
Okay, John. Go ahead.
Okay, John Ellerman, Public Works Director. First of all, we were talking, I have First Christian Church. The county contractor with Bowman and Melvick. In 2007, we studied the First Christian Church property, determined how it would fit into the plaza and if it could be remodeled to meet county's growing space needs. In 2008, the county then retained their involvement to conduct a space needs study with all the departments in the area. The study provided the commission with informal information regarding each of the departments to determine the current and future needs with the total square footage necessary. Mr. Bowman was then hired again in 2012 to update the study. Most studies, it was determined that a remodel of the buildings would not satisfy the space needs then or in the future. With the desire to keep county offices downtown, it was determined the best solution to buy the church for demolition and save the ground for a new county office building, which would satisfy space needs well into the future. When the county purchased the church, parishioners were given an opportunity to salvage items out of the church. In doing so, care was not taken when those items were removed. Many of the copper water lines were removed, and the county was warned not to turn the water off. There is no way of telling the condition of mechanical and electrical systems are in, or if they're even functional. So water and electricity, gas were all turned off the building. It's been mentioned when the additions were constructed, the stone walls of the sanctuary were removed. The structural integrity of the sanctuary may be compromised with the additions. When the additions are removed, with no timeline of any type of improvements to be made to the building, the current continue to degrade, the safety concerns increase. The empty building will start attracting rodents, vandals, and vagrants. Come safety out. Public Works is asking for guidance from the board and budgeting for the maintenance and upkeep for the 2022 budget and for future budgets and CIP. Just to give us an idea of where we're going, how we're to keep or maintain or do what we need to do, whatever you decide. Fiscally, the budgets affected will be the CIP, building fund, and public works for the costs associated with maintenance, upkeep, asbestos removal, and demolition. Asbestos removal was estimated at $65,000. Demolition estimated at around $150,000. That will come from the CIP. It is that, and so will probably the asbestos, or at least that's where I'm going to ask for funds for. It is anticipated any other maintenance of the will come from public or the building fund and our public works budget. CIP projects could be done this year. However, any additional long-term maintenance will need to be budgeted for in the 22 and beyond budgets. So realizing no project will ever be any cheaper than it is right now, staff recommends to demolish the church and plant the area to grass until such time the new office building is constructed.
Couple things on that. What was the entity that was in there between the church and the purchase of the property? Was that another church?
Yeah,
Is that
another
right?
church was leasing it, that's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay. Would
They
they,
were considering purchasing it, I am told, and supposedly they had an offer at one point in time that just fell through, and so.
okay. From my view, and I've been in and out of that building for years. I mean, I've been to weddings and stuff there back when it was fully operational and functional. And I think White Horizons program did some extracurricular stuff there back when I was at Manhattan High. And I don't want to roll back the years on that one at the moment. So, but anyway, during the time between the church and the new church was in there, who was responsible for the maintenance and upkeep? And was that up to standard at that point in time?
I couldn't answer either of those.
Okay.
I couldn't answer.
The other issue you got to take into consideration with whatever we do too, which isn't part of the building and part of the plan, well, part of the structure is IT. For us to be able to do anything with that space, both spaces, all those spaces, we're starting completely over from a technological standpoint. And of course, that will certainly be a needed entity there too, besides HVAC, electrical, plumbing, all the other various entities as well. So it's also something that has to be taken into consideration with that too. You said Brent and his staff are going to give a presentation on May 10th.
Correct, yeah, he is on the schedule. That was the order, we placed everything on the order of the agenda, and Brent had someone on staff that has worked on it that he wanted to have present.
But to me, that's probably at this point in time, pretty much the last piece of the equation in terms of discussion. So I know that's however many days that is, 10 days or whatever else. So,
Yeah.
Don't you think we ought to have a public meeting? I know the community, a lot of people in the community are concerned about it. And
that's what this is a public meeting. That's what today's
well, we
been.
didn't advertise it that way. As far as
They're
people
always
coming
open
in.
public meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what these are.
They can certainly come in at any time in between there and give public comment as well. That's perfectly allowable too. And I haven't seen anything. Nobody's really emailed for or against or anything on this particular subject. Of course, we haven't gotten to a specific point to make a decision. Maybe that changes, but May 10th.
Well, and that, the study done by Brent Bowman was very extensive, but it was 9 years ago. So I would like to see, a request for proposal or, update on that before we make any final decisions. It is a huge decision to make.
Was assuming that was going
building to grass.
I'm pretty sure that was part of what we was going to discuss on the 10th. Am I right or wrong on that?
Well, I don't know, I had suggested that, and Catherine, you actually suggested that we not do that, so when I made my presentation. So this, on May 10th, this will be the 4th time we've had it on the agenda for public discussion. But what I want to mention regarding John's comments about vagrants, just something that commissioners need to be aware of, because I think people think we put that on there, no, that's not really a problem. Well, at least I know Commissioner McKinley saw, I don't know if Commissioner Folke did on her tour, but during that cold weather, there was someone with a sleeping bag down in a stairway on the exterior. That individual has been in the courthouse office building 3 times this week, causing great concern for staff. And matter of fact, police were called in earlier this week and had to confront the individual, and he continues to live there. And so it is your reality that that is an issue.
Well, and that happens throughout the community. I know that throughout downtown, there are a lot of people that are sleeping out in public. And has he been told to vacate? Has he been?
He refuses any help. The police say the police are well aware of him, and he will not move.
But he has not gone inside the building and sheltered.
No, but he has come in the office buildings where staff are, and staff have been very concerned with his presence.
We need to talk to the police.
We did. We did.
Some more.
From what I understand, there may be a few other variables involved with that. But anyway, getting back to the original discussion here, in terms of whatever that date, May 10th. However many days there are in between there, there's still plenty of time for discussion in between there. But at that time, some guidance and direction at least needs to be given. I don't know what that'll be just yet, but
in my comments, one of the things that was brought up, the person earlier was that, some of the stuff demolition, HVAC would be replaced anyway, but it's dysfunctional now. An empty building right now, it doesn't have heating or air, which, if we wanted to, even if we wanted to do something with it, we'd have to do something right away to get the space conditioned inside to start taking, we'd have to spend money right now, temporarily to take care of it.
And probably for plumbing at this particular point in time too, for both.
Take care of all of that stuff to keep it functional. If we wanted to do something later, that's an expense right now to keep it going.
And you probably, because it is a city, it is within the city limits, we'd have to file for permit with the city to do all that and bring it up to some specific standard. I don't know what that is specifically for this particular type of structure, but
Yeah, at a minimum, you'd have to get a mechanical permit to get that re-operational, and plus the expense to do that.
Correct.
Yeah, and the asbestos, I don't know what a hazard that is now until we start tearing it down, and we would have to do the asbestos regardless, demolition or remodel.
I think what would the price tag on that was about $65,000.
She thought it might be less for some of the stuff that's in there.
We're assuming it's probably less, but that was the quote or the estimate given when they inspected it. I think we can get by with a little cheaper, but until we get into it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to veer off the estimate too much.
Do you know what it would, have you got any numbers on what it would cost to maintain it? I mean, there's not a lot going on now, or nobody goes into it very often.
A little extra time here and there, making sure until we start seeing the rodents or break-ins and stuff.
What is the insurance and the liability on it?
So, I don't know, do you know, Tammy, off the top of your head?
We doctors actually reviewed that, so I would have to pull the numbers.
Rough estimate?
No, I'm not even,
Okay.
I only did
Well, let's just say there's a significant cost. Can we?
There's an additional cost for sure.
Additional cost, we'll go with that. Okay.
Because you have to remember, we have to insure it for the value of the entire facility and what it would cost to replace that facility. So yeah, it's a high insurance value for the use we're getting out of it.
Right. Okay, like I said, I'm gonna allow for one last presentation on that, and we'll be on May 10th. That was as soon as he could get in, is that right?
Yeah.
So at that time, we'll see what direction we need to go.
Well, should we go ahead with the asbestos? We have to get the asbestos.
It's not gonna make any difference to do that now or later at this point in time, depending. I mean, I think we need to figure out what we're doing specifically and then go from there.
The only thing with all of it, including the asbestos removal and or demolition, is those costs don't get any cheaper the longer you wait. So that was the reason why Leon Hobson, previous public works director, had suggested the asbestos analysis, because that always came up, well, we don't know what asbestos is going to cost. Now we know what it's going to cost in today's day.
We actually overshot that by quite a bit. So
well, and remember the original quote in 2008 for demolition was 110, and now it's 150. And so, there is additional cost if you hold anything.
It seems a little low too for all that.
Well, there's quite a bit of that kind of got removed in the removal process too. So maybe that's one of the blessings in that. But it's mostly just tile, isn't it?
Well, then the asbestos. Oh yeah, I think the asbestos cost will be cheaper than what 65 is, and I assume Catherine was thinking 150 was low for demolition.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell you the individual gave us those quotes. It's the one that gave the county the original quote in 2008, and he said he pulled the exact same quantities and just updated them to today's figures, and he used two methods to do it, and both of them came in at that figure. And he said he was comfortable with that.
Okay. Well, if anybody has any other questions at this time, we'll move to May 10th and continue this dialogue. Okay. Then you're still up, so you're still standing there.
You're not getting rid of me. Sales tax. So, I spelled my name wrong. Sorry. I spelled my own name wrong.
Next time, don't admit to that one. Just leave that one alone.
So the half-cent sales tax was approved by voters in November of 2012. Will expire at the end of 2022. I hope those numbers are about, the dates are about right. That's when, after the city of Manhattan and rural cities receive their share of the current sales tax, earns an average of about $1.78 million per year for the county. The tax has been very beneficial for Riley County, as it has been utilized for road, bridge, and culvert improvement and replacement projects. Without the sales tax, the placing of old deficient culverts and bridges and doing major road improvements will have to be funded by some other source and may be completed at a much slower pace as funding is available. The only other funding source available, to the best of our knowledge, is the property tax. One way or the other, CIP or budget is property tax. The current sales tax revenues are 1.78 million, equals approximately about 2.66 mils of property tax. With the current sales tax close to expiring, Commission is faced with serious difficulty with the decisions. First, whether or not to ask the Raleigh County citizens to approve sales tax for the continuation of improving the road and bridges in the county. When to place the question on the ballot, and will it be a countywide sales tax or a county-owned sales tax? The countywide sales tax by statute is shared with the cities of Riley County and can run up to 10 years. County-only sales tax can be collected for just the county, although it may be shared with rural cities and set to expire after 5 years. How much to ask for? The amount of sales tax to ask for can be any amount up to 1 cent. The table below shows the actual revenues received from the current half-cent sales tax. The year 2020 is estimated since the year 2021.
No, we won't get to, we can't get to that information this morning. Our index tracks are down, so.
Tammy probably has the amount.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. I'm ready. On this one, I'm ready.
So that's, well, the table also showed the estimate revenues for 0.3, 0.25, and 0.26. So
On the 5-year, are we able to do a 0.25?
You're able to do whatever amount.
Okay.
Point two, and in those figures would show a 0.2 generates basically what we're getting now.
Right.
Would keep us whole.
Okay.
Any percentage higher than that would be additional sales tax. And of course, the amount will go up annually based
Sure.
on sales.
Right.
And this is a county-only sales tax.
Correct.
Yeah. Since
For the
city
one for
has
5
it.
years.
I mean, you could configure that either way. You could go with the, I mean, the state statute allows you to go all the way up to 1 cent there.
Correct.
And you can, and that's what we have in place currently, but because we're going specific with road and bridge, the only really change in that is just what we want to do, and we have to revisit it every 5 instead of every decade. But
It's every 5 years and it doesn't, certain sales tax authorities say you have to do it in 0.25 increments. This one does not.
Okay, that's what I was, okay.
What increment amount.
And there is SB 87, which I talked to the Senate Tax Committee chair over the weekend, this last weekend. It seems like a long time ago. She indicated that they wouldn't probably be able to move that this year, but would be able to probably do it next year. So that may change that. It may give us an opportunity not to have to do that 5 years and still keep it into place. I don't know how that's going to work once it's in place, but we'll have to, no pun intended, cross that bridge when we get to it. Yeah, right. Hopefully a big, long, well expanded bridge. I'm okay with 0.2. To me, it clearly does a couple of different things. It keeps us whole. It's been a program that we've used I did exploration for 20 years. We've done it very, very well. I don't see the need to do anything more outside of that than what we're doing at this point in time. And at least for our rural citizens, it provides another benefit in the fact that it will actually reduce countywide sales tax by 0.3, so more than half. At a time where we have one of the highest sales tax rates in the state, won't do much good on the city. Well, technically, we'll be reducing the city side too, but the city has kind of increased that through their process, and I can't do anything about that. But we're reducing ours by more than 50% to cover what we're covering. I'm very comfortable with that. And keep in mind that it's not, the onus is on everybody, including those that live in the city of Manhattan, and doesn't necessarily go out or use that particular infrastructure, but it's also on everybody who comes in and spends time from regionally, statewide, from wherever as well. So they're helping build that cause for us too, which allows us to offset it. So I'm okay with developing a 0.2 no matter which it needs to be done.
That 0.2 be at the 5 year.
Yeah.
Right. So, having to continually go back every 5 years,
well, you're just
especially what I because we had this thing from this memorandum that came out. There are actually 3 different options. Third one, you can apply a tax that doesn't expire, but it has certain limits. But one of the things that lets,
and you still have to share the formula.
No,
is that correct?
I don't know if I have that document here with me. Thought I did, yeah, I do.
I'm okay with revisiting it every 5 years because to be honest with you, if we're doing it right.
Which one are you referring to? Actually, the third one I don't believe applies because it says specific items you can use it for.
I know, that's what I'm getting there.
Okay, it's not for roads and bridges.
No. Because one of the things you can apply it for is emergency medical services for the ambulances. If we took that and applied it to the ambulance service, and then with the understanding, we'd still, all the money wouldn't be going if we did it at 20, because that, and it says it has to be a 25% estimate. 25%, that's 2.5 million, basically what they need from these numbers. Apply that to the ambulance, but then set up a separate funding or something on our budgeting that we're just going to designate the 1.8 million to roads and bridges in the budget.
I don't think it works that way, does it?
Well, I think what he's saying is
I think
you would basically budget for ambulance and EMS services through that sales tax, and the way you would offset that is you wouldn't have to budget for that, and that ad valorem tax would transfer over to roads and bridges. That gets pretty complex, and
I mean, we can't require everyone in the future to do that with the understanding that that would be the budget going forward. But getting extra money to the ambulance service.
And keep in mind, if you're earmarking that within your budget, another commission then could say, no, we don't want to go to do that. We want to do a different direction. And then it doesn't do what it's intended to do.
But the extra money for the ambulance service would benefit, then that funds the.
Until another commission says we're not doing that anymore.
I'll be able to just add something on that point too, that for the 5 years. So that point two would not only make the county whole, but it would also give you the option to make the small cities whole. The point two would cover both the small cities and Manhattan. I mean, it's a rural Riley County, as we are carrying on at this point. If you so choose to do it.
But that one we can distribute it just to the small cities.
which one, the 0.5?
The
5-year
one.
Well, you guys have an interlocal agreement is what you would do, so we would be the ones distributing it to them through an interlocal agreement.
I can't say.
It's not by a state formula.
Okay. That would be something we
would do in-house.
In-house, separate from that. I mean, somewhat separate from that.
But it would still keep us at the level we're at and let them
And let the
maintain the
small
level
cities.
that they've held for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So
I know that's a concern to
it would be
them.
benefiting the small cities as well as us
Yeah.
if you so chose to go
Right.
that direction.
Go ahead, Rich.
I know John's ready to proceed on the half cents on the sales tax for roads and bridges, not half cent, but sales tax. But I think what does throw a little curveball in it for the commissioners to consider is just your discussion that you had is that maybe next year it would get approved where you get the option for the 10-year. Because I would bet that if you pass one this year and then they approve that legislation next year, they're not going to say you can go back to one that was previously passed and adjust that. So
That's fine.
you'll be limited to the 5 years. Who
In
knows
5
if
years.
they will or will not approve it next
Right.
year for the 10-year, but it is cumbersome every 5 years, but it's better than nothing.
But if they do pass that in 5 years, I'll have to do it once and then it extends out to 10 years.
You have that option.
It just seems like to me, considering everything, considering all the variables involved in this, that seems to be the most sensible approach to accomplish what we need to accomplish, and it reduces sales tax. So there's another benefit involved in that as well. And to try to work on trying to eliminate certain types of sales tax. It doesn't do that here, but it does offer at least some reprieve for those that need it too. And that's kind of an overall benefit, for a lot of different parties at that point in time. The other one on there, that would be perfectly fine until another commission comes in and has a different set of directives, and then who knows?
Well, I know, I would say that.
Yeah.
It would be that, but
I think our roads and bridges right now are going to have to be looked at as its own separate entity, and the other things that we need to do and accomplish going to have to probably come through other means. So,
And I just think it's more transparent if you have that issue and you're putting it on for what you're putting it on rather than lack of a better word, I refer to as a shell game, moving this money here for there, and like you say, then another.
And I think to the voters, because it's still up to them, keeping it comparable to where we've been and where we have, doesn't change it so much to where they get confused and then may not vote for anything at all. And I think that would have been the case last year. Had we done something like this along with the city, we may have lost one or both. And so it's a municipal election this year, so it falls along the other smaller communities and as well as the city. So it shouldn't be a big deal. Our education process should be pretty simple as far as how we structure and what we're doing it for, because it hasn't really changed. So
The city does have a sales tax sale sunset in 2027 as well. That would be the point two.
yeah,
So
for the roads.
at that point, you would actually be going back to ground zero, just like, their intent was with
Mhm.
the 0.5 they took over with this election.
To me, I'm comfortable because I figure we're doing the same thing we've already done for the last 20 years. So like I said, I know we have to redevelop the question and it costs money to put it on the ballot and go through the process, but it's going to do what it needs to do. We're going to continue to do what we've done with it, and I just don't see there being an issue with that. Particularly seeing as we are actually reduce sales tax in the process as well. Yeah. So is that something we want to approach at this point in time? Because we will have some legwork on getting it developed and set up.
Right.
For sure. I guess put something else on Clancy's plate to do, but that's something we want to move forward with.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's definitely needed.
Okay. Commissioner Foki?
I think it's needed. I would like to see, I'm sure we'll be given the final ballot question.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Are we going to have enough money in the budget to promote that? That's a kind of a consideration too.
Yeah.
To sell this to the public.
I think we've got enough in CIP that can be shifted to do some education if we need
We
to.
could locate and look and see what it would cost, to hire an outside firm. Before, when things were more open, it was basically just staff time and it was all exempt people that was doing the presentation. So it really didn't cost anything, but this time I would suggest that, we get a third party to help market, similar to how the city did their half-cent sales tax project under similar conditions. And I have no idea what those cost, but we could find money in the budget somewhere to fund that, but there is a cost.
Yeah, and I think the city spent $100,000 to promote that or
I don't
something.
know, we can find
got a
out.
number, yeah.
If you can kind of check into that, Tammy, and report that to the commissioners, about what.
Their process was, in my opinion, on that maybe a little panicky and over the top too.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I don't know that we're gonna have to spend that much money to accomplish it, but and we can use some of our own tools and stuff internally to assist with that to offset too. So I'm not as concerned with that, but then we can always earmark 20,000, 25,000, 50,000, whatever out of CIP and something else off for a while to get this. Or I don't know if there's a return out of anything out of road and bridge right now. I don't think you can use it for that, but for education purposes, it has to be specifically used. So I don't know if you can transfer that, but
There are monies available. And remember, you also have monies available for economic development.
Yes.
This ties in, that's what previous county commissions have always tied infrastructure to and told, the city and the chamber, our contribution to economic development is infrastructure. Roads and bridges are infrastructure. And a lot of the large projects are right adjacent in the Manhattan urban area. So they are closely tied to the city of Manhattan. So there's another opportunity for some funding. But there would be funding somewhere in the budget that we could identify. But we'll try and get some estimated costs. And I would just say, I didn't follow the cities that closely, but it was obvious theirs was successful. So it may cost a little bit of money to hopefully get a lot more money in the future. So I would suggest that we try and do it right the first time.
so do we need to just do that by consensus at the moment?
If you guys want to proceed with this, I'd think a motion would be appropriate because it's a big item.
make a motion that Public Works in coordination with the council, or with the Clancy, develop towards a 0.2% sales tax for roads and bridges to get on November ballot. Is it?
Have a second?
Okay, a second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded on a 0.2 sales tax initiative. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You are free now.
Busy day down here, John.
Mm-hmm. Okay, is there anything else that we need to discuss this morning?
That's what's going on with
Nothing? Rich, you have anything?
I do not have any other business.
Okay. I don't either, so I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I would make a motion to adjourn the meeting.